So imagine it's 2:47 in the morning, and you're sitting in complete darkness in the middle of the Appalachian wilderness. You're part of a two-man reconnaissance team, and you've been perfectly still for the past 6 hours. The only sounds are the occasional rustle of leaves and your own controlled breathing. And then, you hear it. Footsteps. But not normal footsteps. These are wrong. They're too heavy, too deliberate, and they're coming from directly above you, in the trees. But before we get into today's story, if you enjoy scary stories like these, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. It really helps us out and ensures you don't miss future videos. In October 2019, Staff Sergeant Derek Holloway and Corporal James Jimmy Porter were conducting a routine training exercise in the Cherokee National Forest in eastern Tennessee. Now, this wasn't supposed to be anything complicated. They were practicing advanced reconnaissance and evasion techniques. Basically, they'd establish a hide site in a predetermined location, while another unit would try to locate them using thermal imaging and night vision equipment. Derek had done this exact exercise probably 24 times throughout his military career. It was almost boring at this point. Almost. He and Jimmy had been working together for nearly a year, and they were good, really good. In fact, during their last training exercise at Fort Campbell, they'd gone undetected for 14 straight hours. The plan was simple: establish a hide site in a dense section of the forest, maintain complete radio silence unless there was an emergency, and wait until 0600 hours, when the exercise would conclude. They chose their position carefully, a dense cluster of mountain laurel and deadfall timber that provided excellent concealment, nestled into the side of a steep ridge. By 2000 hours, they were in position. The first few hours were routine, uncomfortable, cold, but routine. Derek could hear the opposing force moving through the forest, their voices carrying in the still night air as they swept the area with their equipment, but he and Jimmy were well hidden, ghost-like. Around midnight, something changed. The temperature dropped. Now, it was late October in the mountains, so cold nights weren't unusual, but Derek would later describe this as different. He said it felt like the warmth was being actively pulled out of the air, like something was drinking it up. And then the wildlife went silent. If you've ever spent time in the woods at night, you know there's always sound. Crickets, owls, the scurrying of small animals. But at 0:15 hours, according to Derek's watch, everything stopped. The forest became so quiet that he could hear Jimmy's heartbeat from 3 feet away. That's when they heard the footsteps. Now, here's where it gets weird. The footsteps weren't on the ground. They were moving through the canopy above them, branch to branch, but with a weight that made the trees creak and groan. Derek's first thought was that it had to be a bear. Black bears can climb, and there were plenty of them in Cherokee National Forest. But then he heard it breathe. It was a sound he'd never forget, a wet, rattling inhale that seemed too long, like whatever was making it had lungs the size of oil drums. And then came the exhale, which Derek said smelled like decay and copper, so strong that it made his eyes water even though he was wearing his balaclava. Jimmy grabbed Derek's arm so hard it left bruises. Neither of them moved. They didn't even blink. The thing in the trees moved closer. They could track its position by the sound of branches bending and snapping, and whatever it was massive. Then, directly above them, maybe 20 feet up, it stopped. Derek could see the thermal scope clipped to his vest. Part of him desperately wanted to reach for it, to look up and see what was there. But a deeper, more primal part of his brain was screaming at him to stay perfectly still. For 3 minutes, nothing happened. The thing just waited there, breathing, that horrible, wet breathing. And then it spoke. Now, Derek wants to be very clear about this. It didn't make animal sounds. It spoke, in English. But the voice was all wrong, like someone was playing a recording of a human voice through a damaged speaker. Distorted, wrong. It said, "I know you're down there." Derek's training completely failed him in that moment. Every tactical procedure, every bit of military discipline, it all evaporated. His body locked up. He couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't even reach for his weapon. The thing shifted in the tree, and in the faint moonlight filtering through the branches, Derek caught a glimpse of it. He saw what looked like an arm pale, too long, with joints that bent in too many places, and at the end of that arm was a hand with fingers that had to be 8 or 9 inches long, gripping the tree trunk. Then it made another sound, a clicking, like someone rapidly snapping their teeth together, but layered, as if multiple mouths were making the sound simultaneously. And then it said something that Derek still can't explain. It said, "Derek Holloway, Staff Sergeant, born July 22nd, 1988. His birth date, his rank, his full name." Jimmy let out a choked gasp beside him. That seemed to trigger something in the creature. It moved on the branch above them, and they heard what sounded like bones cracking and reforming, like it was changing position or changing shape. Then it spoke again, but this time in a different voice. A woman's voice. High-pitched and sweet, but with that same distorted quality underneath. It said, "Jimmy, baby, why won't you look at me?" Jimmy made a sound Derek had never heard another man make, a whimper of pure, primal terror. Because that voice, Jimmy would later tell Derek that it sounded exactly like his mother. His mother, who had died of cancer 3 years earlier. That broke them both. Derek grabbed his radio, breaking protocol, and whispered the emergency extraction code. At the same moment, Jimmy raised his M4 carbine and fired blindly into the canopy above them, sharp, rapid cracks on full automatic, muzzle flash lighting up the darkness in strobing bursts. The thing shrieked a sound so loud and so wrong that Derek said it felt like it was vibrating inside his skull. And then it moved. Fast, impossibly fast. But it didn't run away. It came down. Derek saw it for maybe 2 seconds as Jimmy's muzzle flash illuminated the forest. That was enough. It was vaguely humanoid, but wrong in every possible way. Too tall, maybe 8 or 9 feet. Arms that hung down past where its knees should be. And the face. Derek said the face looked like someone had tried to make a human face out of clay but had never actually seen a human before. Features in roughly the right places, but stretched and distorted. And the eyes too large, too reflective, catching the light like an animal's eyes, but with something that looked almost like intelligence behind them. It landed between them with enough force to shake the ground, and that copper decay smell became overwhelming. Derek rolled to his right, fumbling for his weapon, while Jimmy kept firing, screaming incoherently. And then the creature did something that Derek still has nightmares about. It laughed, not a human laugh. Something that sounded like laughter filtered through broken glass and static, layered over itself, coming from multiple directions at once. Then it spoke one more time, in yet another voice, this time a child's voice. "Wrong forest, soldiers, wrong forest." It moved again, and this time Derek did get his weapon up. He fired an entire magazine at the thing as it bounded away into the darkness, moving on all fours but impossibly fast, crashing through the underbrush like a freight train. And then it was gone. The extraction team arrived within 15 minutes. The entire exercise was terminated immediately. When they got back to base, Derek and Jimmy were separated and debriefed individually by personnel that Derek had never seen before, civilians, not military. The official report listed the incident as a training accident involving wildlife encounter and accidental weapons discharge. The two of them were told, in very clear terms, that they were not to discuss what happened. Not with other soldiers, not with family, not with anyone. But Derek did talk about it. Years later, after he'd left the service, he spent months researching the area where they'd been training. He found something that made his blood run cold. That section of Cherokee National Forest had been closed to military training exercises twice before, once in 1974 and once in 2003. Both times, it was due to incidents involving Special Forces units conducting nighttime operations. Both times, the official reports were classified. He also found local folklore. The Cherokee people who originally inhabited that region had legends about something they called Tsul-Kalu, the slanted eyes, a creature that could walk like a man, climb like a spider, and speak with the voices of the dead. According to these legends, there were certain parts of the forest where humans were forbidden to go. Sacred places, dangerous places. The Cherokee National Forest covers over 650,000 acres. Derek went back with a map and triangulated the exact location of their hide site that night. It was in an area the Cherokee called Tsunoleti, which translates to where the speaking darkness lives. Derek doesn't go hiking anymore. Jimmy left the military 2 months after the incident and moved to Nevada, as far from Appalachia as he could get. The last time Derek spoke with him, Jimmy said he still hears that voice sometimes, his mother's voice, calling to him from dark places. To this day, Derek keeps his thermal scope in a safe in his bedroom. Sometimes, late at night, he takes it out and scans the tree line behind his house. He says he just needs to make sure nothing's up there. Watching, waiting, breathing, laughing. So that's it for today's story. If you enjoyed it and want to see more like this, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Drop a comment down below letting me know what you think happened in those woods. Was it a skinwalker? Something else entirely? I read every comment and I love hearing your theories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.